So we've talked about story, we've talked about scorecard. Now we go to stewardship. Now, when we say stewardship in the church, we typically mean finance and trustees. But you're using, I think, stewardship in the broader sense
Yes.
of the definition and defining it a little more by kind of our part of the kingdom. So let's make sure we get the word stewardship right,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about how that works out.
Yeah, and you're right. I'm talking about in terms of what mission do we feel responsible. I mean, God's called us into partnering with Him in His mission. So yes, then how are we stewarding that privilege that's ours to literally partner with God in His redemptive mission in the world?
And so finance and building is part of that.
Part of it.
But you're also talking about stewarding our community, stewarding whatever the part of the kingdom that we are given to take care of.
That's right. And you can see how it ties in to story and scorecard. That's why these are integrated. You don't get a pass. I mean, basically in stewardship is the leadership discussion. That's where that really comes to rest. What are we, as leaders, how are we stewarding, our role as kingdom leaders and as helping our people become viral kingdom agents and the kingdom impact that we want to have, which by definition is community impact, not just the church getting along. And facilities is a great example of that. I think you hinted at that in our last discussion.
Yeah. Well, my experience in ministry has been that people are so attached to the buildings that in some ways it can be a resource, but in a lot of ways it's kind of an anchor to mission.
People hear things I don't say all the time, so I often say, please don't hear what I'm not saying. In fact, I wrote a whole chapter in one book on things I didn't say, but I knew people heard them, but I didn't say them. And one of the things that people hear me say is I'm against, churches, having buildings. I've never said that. I am against church buildings. In other words, if you're going to build something, why in the world would we build it just for a group of people to hang out together for a worship service? Wouldn't a stewardship be, we're trying to be people of blessing, that's our call. How are we blessing the community with everything that we do, including whatever facility we build? So, yes, I mean, for instance, if you went to, I'm thinking of Life in Deep Element in Dallas, there's a coffee shop, an art studio, shared workspace, and a music venue, which is used by the church on Sunday. But the rest of that building is going to play, the other 6 days of the week as a community development center. Or why not even think about it as a community development center? I mean, that's a great storyline. I mean, that's our job. I mean, included in that is people here, including that is the spiritual welfare of our communities, but it can't stop there. I mean, because you can't decide spiritual is just some one aspect of life. It impacts every aspect of life. So, yeah, our buildings, and I think I mentioned last time in the last segment about the life churches, the life centers that this organization that's planted tens of thousands of these in the villages of India the last 20 years. I mean, what a story! What a different story that is. That's a kingdom expression. This is a life center. So the particular place I was part of dedicating out in this village, I have no idea where I was. I was just with, it's used by the church, the Fellowship of Believers, on Sunday, but it's a clinic. It's a schoolhouse. It's a gathering place for other organizations in the community. And that's a stewardship. That's a kingdom stewardship.
Yeah. So you're talking about helping leaders make sure they see all the things they're responsible for and all the resources they have to go at those things.
Yes.
Right? So I'm responsible for this community, and I've got people and man hours, and you talked about prayer, and I've got all these things to be able to be responsible for, to move the pieces on the board. So often we only are moving a couple pieces. We've got way more.
Right. And it also impacts why we think, what are we doing with our folks? I mean, everything's not about the folks out there. I mean, church people are part of God's mission too. What do we think we're equipping them for? Mm-hmm. And you and I both know, so often we help people discover their gifts so they can serve the church better. What? Really? I mean, the early church had those same gifts, but they didn't have a hospitality team at church. They actually thought their gift of hospitality was to be used out, where they lived, in the community, or all those gifts that the Spirit gave are not given so we can operate church better. I mean, how are we? What's our stewardship of our own people to help and develop and empower them to be viral? And I keep using this phrase, but it's the truth. Viral kingdom agents. We need a kingdom pandemic. We got to get this sucker going. That's not going to happen if we don't see, as leaders, our stewardship of our own people and turning them into kingdom people, not church people. I mean, one of the things that, and I know we're going to talk about this in a second, but see, that impacts what we think discipleship is. That's a huge story there.
Yeah. So how do you help, as you're consulting with churches, how do you help them? How do you help the stewardship lens get bigger? Because we're so narrow.
I will say, this is where leadership is critical, because people they only do something different if they see the leader doing something different. Mm. This is where there's got to be a conversion, a deconversion and a conversion of the leadership core of the church, to where they literally, like, even as a pastor, the things you talk about in front of folks, if all of our illustrations and stuff are inside the church, a couple came to see me the other day or whatever, no, it makes a big difference if the pastor says, as you know, I read to kids down here at the elementary school a mile down the street. And last Tuesday I was there and I had a conversation with the building custodian. I mean, when you move your own frame of reference, that helps people move their frame of reference. When, and this is where the leadership, and it can't just be the pastor, it's got to be the leadership core. It's got to happen. I tell you, this is a group thing where it's, we're going to change this sucker by the way we live, not just, our practice has to match what we are saying here.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that too is the old-fashioned idea of testimony.
Yeah.
Getting the people who aren't the pastor to stand up and say, here's what I've been doing at my work. And you've already given some ideas for... Oh,
that's why I think that's a brilliant thing about 24 hours from now.
Yeah,
I mean,
I love
that's
that.
Just a great way of saying, and every one of your leaders should be known in the community, not as a great church person, but how are you building their reputation as a great kingdom person?
Yeah.
What that means is, if I'm on the session or I'm an elder, and I got to think about, how am I treating, and I own a business, how am I treating my employees? Yeah. What am I doing there that shows, real life orientation? I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road. I mean, this is not just abstract stuff here. This is the leaders living out a different mission in front of the people so they get it.
One of my professors, Craig Barnes, who's now at Princeton Seminary, he was at Pittsburgh at the time, one of the things he encouraged us to think about was, anytime we came in the scripture to a job, a role, make sure you honor and pray for those people.
Yes.
You get a teacher. If there's a teacher in the Bible, teacher. Okay, if somebody gets healed, medical professionals.
Right.
Pray for a medical. Right. Just a recognition of these Bible roles, you're already doing them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that was another great example of
And
how
you
to
know,
do that.
my friend, when he does at the end of that interview in the 24 hours from now, it'll say it's a real estate person or a teacher or whatever. He says, because he's got, several thousand people in attendance, he says, all of you who are in a similar role, stand up where you are. And then when he prays for that person, he prays for all of them. I mean, again, that honors
Yeah.
people's kingdom assignment. The kingdom assignment is where we live and work and play, and I mean that's where life happens. Yeah. And one of the things, again, by the way, that's happened in COVID is we've made the home again a spiritual center. And so it's not the church building. What's happening in your home, man, that's an important stewardship. Yeah. That's reclaiming territory that, frankly, we just bring your kids to us. We'll take care of them.
Well, we always said the church is the people. It's not the building.
Yeah. Oh.
But until we couldn't go to the building.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, that was kind of bullcrap to us because that's not really how we were living.
Oh, yeah.
We thought it was the building.
Yeah, you and I both go, here's the church, here's the steeple, open the church. We didn't get to the people till we got past the church and the steeple.
Yeah. and I do think
says it all.
We're in this awakening that COVID has accelerated to say you're stewarding way more than this little building and these couple programs and this hour a week.
And one of the things I'm asking my clients is, look, the programs and all that you've done without since March, which one of those do you want to continue to do without instead of reinstituting them just when you can come back together? So you're freeing up staff, leadership time, and and money, and your people. Why do you really want to refire all that stuff back up, or how can we have a simpler, keep the focus on what happens away from here? Because that's the only way we're going to steward this well.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we don't get the stuff right, the scorecard and the story are going to be off.
That's right.
It's why you got to, like you said, every piece. It's got to be all three.
It's all three.
Skip one.
That's right. You're done.
Yeah.
It'll eat you up.
Yeah. I think it's all three. And I think for a lot of our churches, this stewardship piece is going to be hard.
Well, and I'll tell you another thing that this all helps. In a church-centric world, we judged our work on the size of our congregation. And, and we thought if we were big and strong and powerful, the world out there would just pay attention. Are you kidding? I mean, we have anyway.
And this is the chance of the small church, by the way.
Exactly.
The small church could actually be more adaptable and be more kingdom oriented because there's not as much to change.
And I'll tell some of them, you were terrible at the old game anyhow. Why don't you give that game up and let's play one you can win? Because it's true. And it's not just, that's just not a wish. Every church can have a outsized kingdom impact, no matter the size of their worshiping congregation. You start celebrating your impact at church, even as you are partnering with other churches to get some things done. You get to celebrate that. Oh my gosh! Now you're back into life-giving stuff.
Yeah, and new people notice that.
Yes.
And millennials can get on board with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And why are we limiting our sense of impact by how many folks want to come by for a snack bag? I mean, come on. We got people, everybody that partners with us, we should celebrate as part of our, impact and mission. Well, that could be. I'm thinking of a church right now in this state. The size of the worshiping crowd. In fact, I brought him into a leadership call, and my supervisor that I was working with at the time, this organization, because I was convening leadership teams, he said, there's something wrong with this organization because this pastor is reporting, like 30-something people in their church, but over 300 in their ministry team. I said, no, they got it just right. See, he's used to those numbers being reversed, 300 and something people on Sunday, but 30 in the leadership team. I said, no, and I said, I know that, no, because that church, that pastor, it's an inner city, and she told the folks when she went there that, all right, we're going to still have church, and I can do hospice ministry and help all of you, but we're going to build a downtown. We're going to build a better community. And so she's got homeless people serving homeless people. She's got, she gets it. And look at the life in that. Yeah. Look at the exponential impact of that. That's what I'm talking about. And that's worth doing.